Thank you. The chat and Q&A are open. We try to keep this very interactive. So as you have questions, whether it's our during our panel discussion or during our presentations, feel free to drop questions into Q&A and chat. All right, Manan, you want to get us kicked off here?
I think just in a minute we can start.
Thank you, Gray, for joining us and our friends from Flow Fuse. Always good to have partner conversations. I'm sure we have a lot of common customers, so um, excellent to be able to discuss the value that we bring together.
Absolutely excited to be here.
So I think now we can start. My camera is also almost back. So good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everyone. I think there are different people that I can see joining in from different geos across the globe. So today's session is all about what EMQ is trying to do in the industrial IoT space. If we remember, like I see a lot of names which joined in the last session where we just gave a slight introduction into the industrial IoT space. This time we are going to dig deeper into what actually double IoT stands for and how it helps the entire ecosystem, really manage data. And then we also have an external partner this time, which is FlowFuse, who has an ecosystem, made specially, an environment made, which is quite robust for the Node-RED technology capability. We are going to understand it from the external eco partner itself. We're going to understand the products that EMQ has, in regards to the industrial IoT space. We are also going to understand what, in terms of the different capabilities come together in shaping up this industry is going forward with. And we also have the product updates for EMQX that we always talk about in different EMQX sessions that we host for different geos. This time, this is a global session that we are hosting. That is where we see people from different geos together. And so we are going to talk about all the products that we have. I think my presentation, it's not visible. Nevertheless, I'm going to share all the details. So just to kick it off, I'm just going to set the agenda for today's session. There are predominantly 4 major aspects that we are going to talk about: where the industry is heading with regards to IoT in the industrial IoT space. That is going to be set by our marketing director, Josh. We also heard him speak about the industrial IoT space last time, where he just gave us key hints. Today, we are going to dig deeper into understanding more about that. We also have Ernest, who's always been with us since the start of the EMQ office hours. Our technical content manager from EMQ. He's going to assist us with the products that EMQ already have in the market that you as developers can go to our platform and utilize it right there and then. We also have Ivan from our technical team, which is based out of Europe. Ivan is going to give us the product updates for this month with the EMQX cloud solution that we have. And to end it all and to talk about the Node-RED capabilities and how EMQ has also helped FlowFuse, basically build their own ecosystem environment for developers to basically have a no-code, low-code environment to utilize, Node-RED capabilities. So that's like the overall agenda. In between, I'm also going to share the different channels that we have for developers like you, business people like you, wherein you can come and connect with us from EMQ. I think everyone should treat this space as an opportunity where you are directly interacting with the industrial leaders that we have. It's always that we talk to our support teams and basically get our questions solved. But then I would urge this to everyone to kindly make this session more interactive. Utilize this time, wherein whatever doubts that you have, whether it's a simple one, whether it's too complicated, even if we do not have the answers to it, we will definitely come back to you with the solution. The session is getting recorded, so we're going to send it across right after the session gets over in a PDF format, the presentation and the video recording as well. Let's make it interactive. Let's and both the Q&A, as Ernest mentioned before, the Q&A and the chat are enabled. So if you just want to talk about anything, you can continue in the chat. But if you have a very specific question, you can put it in the Q&A tab that you see on the bottom screen, and we can take it up from there. So I think without wasting any more time, I hand it over to Josh to basically take us through the industrial IoT space that we are in today, the 4.0 space that we are in today.
Cool. So last time we talked about some of the fundamentals of industrial automation. We talked about the ISA 95 model and how a lot of people are looking at a unified namespace architecture right now. We'll revisit that stuff a little bit. Gray is going to go into some detail and how FlowFuse is supporting that. I thought what we would do this time is talk a little bit about how IoT and IIoT differ, because it's pretty fundamental to understanding the technologies then that flow or that you'll encounter in the IoT space and how they're maybe a little bit different. So, for example, some example IoT type of applications that you have probably seen, that you probably use, that would be pretty familiar to anybody working in the IoT space, right? Like even hobbyists, right? Smart homes is a great place if you are just learning IoT. You can start tooling around, setting up some little sensors, connecting them to a Raspberry Pi or other little devices, and start taking measurements from your environment, capturing that data, visualizing it, doing interesting stuff with it, right? And you can pretty much learn the technology stack that you're going to use for almost any IoT application. This is going to be true. I mean, we're working with people in the wearable health devices space, certainly connected vehicles, smart cities more recently. And one thing that a lot of these have in common, actually, I'm gonna maybe not smart cities as much, but certainly wearable devices, connected vehicles. One thing that these have in common is that the vendor typically owns the entire ecosystem end to end, right? So if they're selling a smart home monitoring system, right, they're going to provide you with the sensors, they're going to provide you with the router that goes in your house, and they're going to own, the back end systems as well to monitor all of that data. That they'll give you the app and whatever services that app offers to monitor your home. So all of that goes together, and they can build this nice, efficient technology stack. And that's more or less true for wearables. Certainly that's true for connected vehicles, right? They sell you the vehicle. The vehicle is the platform for all of the services. This is starting to change, right? Their OEMs are looking to open up their software platforms for in-vehicle services. That's kind of a different story, so that may change. But right now, yeah, they own the whole thing, for better or worse. Smart city starts to cross more into the IIoT space, and that's because we're looking at lots of different devices that were made by different companies that work on different technologies, and that's maybe not something that the city has any control over. Again, it depends kind of on what they're doing, right? If they're monitoring utilities within the boundaries of the municipality, versus monitoring energy usage by a given building, right? That's going to be owned by a private company or person, private entity of some kind. But basically that problem, scale that up a bunch, and that's what you're dealing with in the IIoT space. But keep in mind, these are types of examples that you're going to be really familiar with. We'll kind of contrast this with the IIoT space and why that presents a different problem set. Okay, so IIoT examples, and hopefully you're familiar with some of these. If not, feel free to throw questions in the chat and I can go into more detail. We can talk about it. But certainly the first one that you're going to hear about in most cases is manufacturing automation and optimization. Both Gray and I come from an automation background, and that's nothing new in the manufacturing space, right? People have been working on automating manufacturing processes for decades now. But Industry 4.0 and IIoT as kind of a solution for Industry 4.0 now are trying to take that to another level. And I think probably the easiest way to explain that is, like the client server model that came out in the 90s was huge in automation, but that's basically still what a lot of people are doing if they're not doing stuff on paper. And Gray, can I get an amen from you on that? Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. So there's still a
that's
lot
correct.
of processes. Yeah. There's still a lot of processes that are done very manually. And we're talking about sizable organizations that you would be familiar with, right? Ernest, you were just at an oil and gas show last week, right? And one of the feedbacks that you came back with was that, hey, yeah, there's a lot of people who are still trying to automate their basic labor processes, right? Do you want to add any color to that?
Absolutely. Yes, there is some prep that must be done, right? We know we want to get to that end goal of a digital transformation with AI, with machine learning. But in order to do that, right, we have to have that data in place, have to have that data in one place, right? So IIoT is part of that practice, right? And gathering and collecting that data.
Yeah, and it's pretty hard to do that if they're still on clipboards, but that is the case for a lot of enterprises. So yeah, they want to move beyond that certainly, but like Ernest mentioned, they want to use all of the other technologies that have become available in the last few decades to feed back data into their process to make it better, to produce better products, to produce a safer work environment. Certainly things like, regulatory compliance, environmental safety, those are big motivators for a lot of what people are doing in there as well. You may have come across the term circular manufacturing, where we know, let's say, we can trace raw materials from their source to the product out into the field, learn how the product is operating, what happens with those materials after people are done with the product, how do we recycle them, how much is going to waste, and how much can we recapture and then actually feed back into our production processes, right? And there's a lot of reasons you can imagine why that might be important. So these other items on here, predictive maintenance, supply chain, those come into play with the kind of the larger manufacturing environment, whether that's trying to make the manufacturing process more efficient, or whether that's trying to feed information, to the R&D group, the data scientists, the product development, or just managing the flow, maybe, trying to reduce waste in the supply chain. So IIoT has applications for all of those different parts. And they're all parts that have been touched, in the last few decades by industrial automation. And now the goal is to bring those together into a more integrated kind of ecosystem. And in particular, we're looking to get better quality of data and a better quantity or a higher frequency of data. So maybe we could take a measurement of a pump that's sitting in a field somewhere, right? Whether that's for a wastewater application or, petrochemical. And maybe we're used to getting one sample from that pump every hour, right? And if we could make that every minute, that would be a huge change for the organization, right? In terms of what they could do with the amount of data, but also it requires kind of a new approach. The old architectures aren't built to share data that way, or in formats that make it consumable by the backend systems that will then go on and do all the cool stuff that we want to do, right? And as an example of what some of those systems are, here are some of the types of functions. You guys might have a different take on this. I tried to break down what I thought were kind of the key IIoT functions, right? Where you're most likely to encounter different technologies, different products that are going to do one of these functions, right? So data acquisition is kind of the basic, the starting point, I think, for most IIoT applications. And that could be IoT devices, but that could also be legacy devices, right? Maybe a PLC that already exists in a facility that's doing some of the data acquisition, like it's reading raw, IO signals from a sensor or from another piece of equipment that's not integrated into the automation, right? That controller sits in between to do some of that acquisition. And then as systems evolve, these, imagine most of these applications are brownfield applications, right? There's a factory that's sitting out there somewhere, and they're like, we want to get smarter, we want to get faster, we want to digitally transform. And so that's one area that they're probably going to start. Could we get devices in there that will help us to acquire data faster, or make that data available in IIoT compatible formats like MQTT? And that's where that next step, data transformation, comes in. You could call this data processing too. I picked that word because typically you're dealing with industrial specific protocols, things like Modbus, Siemens Profinet. Alan Bradley has a whole bunch of different very popular protocols, none of which are really gonna work for most of what you want to do with it, right? They'll work with the automation specific systems like a SCADA system. But if you want to send that data to the cloud, you're going to have to do a whole bunch more work to figure it out. And it's much more efficient to do that work at the edge. And so typically an IoT system is going to have some layer in there that deals with transforming that data. And hopefully into something like MQTT that's going to be very easy to distribute and consume. And so that's the next part, right? The distribution part. And that's kind of EMQ's focus, is how do we take that data and get it everywhere you need it to go from however many clients you're trying to consume it from. That's why pub-sub is such a great model. MQTT is built on that pub-sub communication model. And it's great because it's designed for distributed communications. So that's the unified namespace concept is built around that kind of a model, right? Where lots of different clients can publish data into the system or consume data from the system, right? So to achieve scale, we need that new model, and you need components that are designed for distributing that data. Integration is kind of the next part. There are going to be parts of the system on both sides, the OT side and the IT side, that are not really ready for IIoT. They don't speak MQTT, maybe, or you just can't get rid of them, right? That's always a constraint with IIoT systems. You can't walk in and say, hey, we've got a new technology, just take all this stuff out and put some new stuff in, right? Very expensive.
Yeah, some of these were even built before the internet existed.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So these legacy devices, I like to say we bring sensors into the future of technology, because they just weren't meant to communicate, not just communicate on the internet, but communicate efficiently over protocols like MQTT.
Yeah, it's a must. That like legacy integration layer. Yeah, so that might happen kind of at the data acquisition part. I keep pointing the wrong way. Or that might happen at a different layer, right? There might be like a gateway server that sits in there somewhere. And Ernest will probably talk about this a little bit later on. And I know Grace certainly will. That's a big part, though, is once you've got the data, you want to get it out to other things that are going to do interesting stuff with it, right? So that's really what the integration layer is. In an industrial environment, you're going to have things like MES systems, manufacturing execution systems, ERP systems, which are enterprise resource planning systems. You're going to have things like historians, which are basically just fancy databases. Sometimes they actually are time series databases that are designed for this kind of data, right? The kind of data that's produced in an industrial environment. So you're going to need some way to integrate with those systems. That touches on storage. Pretty common use case in most of these environments is that we don't want to just produce a bunch of data and then consume it in real time. We want to have it there as well for historical purposes. We want to go back and learn from what the system is doing. And that also connects to the analytics part. Anybody want to add something to this? Gray, you have anything I left out?
No, I usually break it down to about 3, and you've kind of broken some of those components, like the integration as into storage and analytics and things like that. But no, those are the basic components of integrating data, gathering data, and sending data, and visualizing. The only other one that I'd probably add
That's
is
a good
just
one.
visualization. Yeah,
That's
to see where things are in the
visualization,
process.
reporting. Go. Were you going to say something else?
No, I think visualization was the only one that I'd probably add to that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, visualization and reporting, if that's kind of not part of the same package. Yeah, very common use cases. We want to take all of this data and we want to understand how well is the system performing, right? So get some dashboards for the execs, produce monthly reports, send stuff down at different levels, line, area, site, global, all of that stuff. So actually, that's a great addition. Thanks for adding that. So a couple of important distinctions between these two types of systems. What am I doing on time here? I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna hand it off. So yeah, IoT and IIoT differ in a couple of important ways, right? Where, like I mentioned at the beginning, an IoT system likely to be pretty homogeneous. IoT systems likely to not be, right? You're going to have devices from lots of different vendors that make up this factory environment or whatever it is. You have to figure out how to get all of those to communicate. Hence, that the acquisition and transformation, the data processing components that you need for that. Likewise, that impacts on integration and whatnot, where if you own all of those systems, you can build all of those integrations yourself. It's pretty straightforward. You determine what the interfaces look like, what the requirements are. In an IIoT space, that's not going to be the case. And you'll need some kind of Swiss Army knife in there somewhere to make those connections happen for you. You can imagine if you're dealing with critical infrastructure, things like security, those become an even bigger deal. As we talked about last time, that those concepts are built into the ISA 95 model, right? We want to have parts of our ecosystem that are segregated for the purposes of security, which is maybe not something you're going to deal with in an typical IoT environment. And so we talk about the concept of OT, IT convergence, right? How do we bring these two very different types of systems together? And that problem is right at the heart of IIoT. That's really what it's trying to solve. And I won't touch on the other stuff here unless somebody has a question about it. I see some stuff coming up in chat, so I'm going to take a look at that. And in the meantime, I'll hand it over to you, Bray.
Awesome, thank you. The one I would add one more thing to your list, and that would be the difference between IoT and IIoT would be safety. There are applications where IoT can be, needing safety aspects, but when you start thinking about IIoT, safety is a big proponent. I always think of safety's role is to barely let the system run. So if anything goes wrong, it automatically protects and saves, makes everything safe. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and then we'll kind of get started. Let me make sure I click on all the right buttons. And there we go. So let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. I'm going to get my timer reset and then we'll get going. So what is Node-RED? And a little bit about background on it. It was founded in 2014 at IBM. It was founded by our CTO, Nick O'Leary. It was open source shortly after, and it has approximately about 4,600 integrations right now. So what that means is the number of nodes that Node-RED can connect to is above 4,600, and they're all available on the flow or on nodered.org. We have approximately 500,000 monthly downloads in Docker alone of Node-RED. And really what it does is kind of covers a lot of those discussions that Josh was just kind of going over. And it's really the Swiss Army knife. And so there's a lot of solutions out there that can do a good majority of the integrations or this type of connections, but where it comes into play is there's probably going to be a Node-RED integration that can help you close that gap and start thinking about things in real time. And so one of the questions I always like to kind of think about is if you ever need to go and export data out of a system, maybe you should start thinking, say, maybe I shouldn't export this data into, let's say, a CSV file or something like that and start manipulating it there to get your visualization understanding. But what you should do is see, how can I move this data into a system in which I can create real-time analytics? And Node-RED really kind of helps you do that. Another little thing I would kind of highlight is Node-RED is one of these things that can just be easily installed on any different application system, and it's designed to be able to be installed quickly and easily and efficiently and start finding value very, very quickly. It was even included in Raspberry Pi's Raspbian for a while about so you can automatically start pulling that up and start working with it. So what is FlowFuse? So FlowFuse is open core, and we depend on the Node-RED application to really deploy all of. And what we do is that we deploy Node-RED into these different environments, whether it be on a container, whether it be on a Windows box, a Linux box, a remote device that's sitting on the edge. In a different cloud or different environment, what we do is we allow you to manage all of your Node-RED instances with multiple different configurations and really make it efficient for you. Because for me, a little backstory around 2016, 17, I did my first project with Node-RED. I was working in a pretty large manufacturing company, did some really, really cool things. And while Node-RED has a lot of the features in there for helping create security and built out, when it starts getting into the scalability, it starts becoming cumbersome. And when I brought this to the IT department, they said, We're not going to manage this. So this is a kind of a no-go." And that's where, when I found out about FlowFuse, I realized I'm like, this is the problem that I was trying to solve in 2016 with all the value that could be added to the system. I'm gonna move my camera down here so I'm not looking up at the top hand of the screen every once in a while. So that's just a little bit of the background, but it really boils down to three core pillars: operation and maintenance, developer velocity, and security and compliance. And I kind of cover those in just a second, but let's move on real quick. So what is operation and maintenance? So, fleet management from a single dashboard. So, what that means is you're able to quickly deploy Node-RED to many, many devices and update them in real time. So, let's say, for example, you have a fleet of windmills or fleet of vehicles that you have some kind of analytics. Maybe you're pulling in miles per gallon, maybe you're pulling some metric from those systems, and you need to tweak something to add additional metric from the system. Instead of having to go to each individual system and update those changes within Node-RED, what you can do is do a snapshot of that system. What that means is, if you're familiar with, like, let's say, Windows or server, virtual machine type environment, you take a snapshot of it and you grab all the configurations of that and you can push it to all the other devices in your environment. So if you're working in a pharmaceutical company, you have a single pill machine that's doing pill presses. You want to do some changes on that, do the changes on that one, and then you can push that all to the other system or machines very quickly and easily. If you start thinking about high availability, you need to have a lot of high throughput. From a single click in the cloud, you're able to get high availability and really start making sure that you can really scale to the needs that you need. And of course, SLAs. So developer velocity, and that's kind of like that local edge development that I was kind of talking about. So let's say, and I kind of covered that in a previous discussion, but again, running a local, let's say, lab environment, and you're working on the system, doing some changes, take a snapshot, and then push those out to those systems. Group devices. So let's say you have a plant of pill presses for a pharmaceutical company. You've got line A, line B, and line C. And let's say a line A, you can group them together. Line B, you can group them together. And line C, you can group them together. And they might have some minute differences between the two, so you can kind of manage those different systems appropriately. And again, versioning control and snapshots, and then collaboration with a team library. So one of the biggest things that we've heard from our Node-RED community was, when you have a specific flow or information that you like and want to share with your team, we are able to export that, let's say, logic. Imagine it being like ladder logic from a PLC or system, and basically take that logic and share it easily across the team to many different environments. And security and compliance. So we want to integrate with SSO to make sure you have the correct management system, role-based access control. So if you have people that are saying, "Hey, I want this person to be able to be my admin. I want to have somebody to be able to create flows, edit flows." And then I have people that just want to visualize dashboards and visualizations. That's all built into the FlowFuse platform. And recently, we just received SOC 2 Type 1 certification as well. So, which is a big deal when you start looking at these larger companies. You need to have that certification that we're taking care of your data appropriately. And last but not least, we're having a program. So if you've worked with Node-RED, you know there's a vast swath of nodes that are existing in the ecosystem. I said 4,600. What we are going through there is certifying those nodes and making sure that we are putting, like, if you can imagine, like the blue Twitter check mark on these and saying, hey, these are approved by us. We're in the realm of, we're realizing that this is a core node to the platform. So we're going through there in each of those different ecosystems and kind of bringing that to the forefront. So how does this work? So I showed the screen a second ago, and what you can think about is what we have here is the Flow Fuse platform, and you have different applications that live inside it. And I'll show you a screenshot of what that looks like in a second. But you have different applications, and each of these applications can host a subset of Node-RED instances. And then from there, you have remote devices. So these remote devices could be outside of the world, outside of the Flow Fuse platform, in which you can remotely manage, snapshot, auto snapshot, and take a backup of that Node-RED flow. So if you have a device that's running, it's been running for 2 years, and you don't know if you have a snapshot, jump into the Flow Fuse platform. You've got it all there. If, let's say, something breaks, you replace the physical device, upload it, and then you can push that snapshot back down to it, and it's up and running, firing away right away. So that's kind of how this kind of environment works, and the main goal of that was to make it easier and usable and scalable for our customers. So this is a little bit of a peek into the application. What you see is this is a single application called Device to Dashboard, in which we have two instances and then a single device that is managed by the single application. We have teams, so let's say you're a system integrator managing for multiple different customers. You'll be able to look at this and say, okay, I have two different customers, and so I have teams that can manage and go in and say, okay, I'm customer A, customer B, and they don't see each other. Manage the instances and members and audit logs. So one of the additional things we have is audit logs for all of your Node-RED applications. Is somebody installing Node-RED, who is doing changes, and kind of making sure that you keep all those available to your customers. But now let's pull back and let's talk about, where does Node-RED sit? And this kind of ties into Josh's conversation about that acquire data, transform data, and visualize data. And that's kind of how I break them down. And so what we see here is the Purdue model. It's I say 95 kind of structure, like where data sits. So on the level 0, we'll do a little bit of refresher of the Purdue model. Level 0 is your field devices. Those are the devices that are speaking those specific protocols that the PLCs know. That can be anything from Modbus, TCP, Ethernet IP, which is the Rockwell, S7, Siemens protocol, and many, many different others. And those specific protocols have a specific purpose, generally between data speed and communicating between the PLC and the device, and whether or not how long that wire can go. That's a big issue. Is am I going to be supplying power to that device? So all of these different protocols, and they're not going to go away. This is just the way it is. You go into a chemical industry, they're going to be using one specific protocol because it works for that industry. You go to another one, they use that specific protocol because it works and it has key things that they need. Because it's a different story of whether or not you're turning screws and making things that are like, I'm making 1,000 of these a minute, versus I need to turn a valve on my flow tank, or must say my oil tank. And when I turn that valve, I don't care if it takes me a half second for that valve to start closing, because it's going to take 10 seconds for it to entirely close. So as you move up that Purdue model, you start thinking, okay, well, now we're collecting these data points from this level 1. And what this is, the transformation, and that's the acquiring data and bringing that into, let's say, the unified namespace. So the unified namespace we have marked out as EMQX here, and think of these as two individual brokers. You have one kind of like an enterprise level up here at level 4 in the cloud, and then you have the let's say OT specific broker that is below the level 3.5, and that's segmented by the firewall. So what you would ideally want to do is tie these brokers together. And so what you would then do is say, okay, Node-RED, transfer the data from these lower level devices and bring it into my EMQX server. And then with that unified namespace, it would be propagated across that firewall. And from there, Now from Node-RED or FlowFuse, you're able to do that transformation, that visualization, and maybe even bring in more data from those different layers. So this is just kind of like a different approach or how things are done, which is kind of like the client server type of approach, where it's now a publish subscribe approach, where now anybody and everybody, and it really kind of ties into that developer citizen development kind of mentality. What are you going to be doing to help I know I'm reintroducing a new term, but going with the unified namespace and going with this kind of mentality, you're thinking about the future, about how you are going to be creating an environment in which the people inside of your company can pull data out of the EMQX, MQTT broker and start using it in real time, rather than start thinking about, hey, extracting data from a historian or extracting data from a different system and doing and running a report. What you can do is start creating these integrations with these different systems with Node-RED and pulling in live data, historic data to give you a real-time analytics report curated to you. Because there's one most important thing about the citizen development that is sometimes kind of overlapped, is the people that are citizen developers are the people that have the domain expertise and understand the data better than anybody else in this space. And what is better than putting the person that knows more about the data in the driver's seat? I can't tell you a better solution or better option. Put the person that knows the data the best in the driver's seat and give them the tools to be able to pull that data and organize that data. Whether you're going to be bringing it into the MQTT broker down at the level 0 or bringing it up into the level 4 and then transforming it and doing any analytics there. So just kind of want to pause there. Josh, I see you've got something pulled up on your
Yeah,
screen. Is there
I was just
something you
gonna
want to
chime
add?
in. Yeah,
Yeah.
just as a reminder, because I'm not sure who was here last time and who wasn't, but we did touch on that, the levels of the ISA 95 stack, and the core problem that we're trying to address here that is keeping most people from moving forward with their Industry 4.0 initiatives. This is exactly what Gray is talking about. We have this nice structured architecture, again, circa 90s, designed around restricting the flow of data and control, more importantly, right? Gray mentioned how critical safety is for a lot of these systems. That's safety to people, safety to the environment, safety to equipment and product, right? Those are all things that are at risk if somebody up in the business planning space starts sending the wrong kind of stuff down and in tampering with the process controls, right? So it's designed to restrict movement. But we've got this goal to make data more available, right? How do you overcome that? Well, what Gray is talking about right now is a way of balancing those two principles, right? Maintaining safety while also democratizing data or improving the flow of data. And key to what I was talking about before of improving the process is getting the data into the hands of the people who need it so that they can make smart decisions. And Gray's taking it even one step further, actually act on that data to go create new applications, new reports, whatever it is that they need to improve their part of the process. Putting it in their hands is a key that you'll see coming up in a lot of different Industry 4.0 discussion, not just in the IIoT space, but if you're following like AR and VR, for example, types of applications in the Industry 4.0 space, they're trying to solve the same problem using a different set of technologies, but with the same goal. How do we get more data in front of the people who are experts and who are trying to make decisions? So back to you.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for kind of making sure we tie the previous conversations with this one. I think I only have a couple more slides, and I don't want to bore you to death, and I definitely want to have time for conversation. So, one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about is dashboards and visualization. So, right now, we have a new visualization. We're producing a new, let's say, node, which is that 4,600 integrations solutions on side of the Node-RED industry. So you have OEE, and these are things called blueprints. And what we have done is we started kind of packaging these up directly for our customers to be able to get started on their, let's say, Industry 4.0 journey. And they can bring in the data, whether it's coming into different systems, transforming it and visualizing it. So as you think about moving up that produce stack, you're going to be able to see and desire to see different visualizations from let's say your environment. So level 1, you're going to say, is my machine running? Is the processes running? And all this data is going to be the same data. It's just going to be manipulated and twisted in a different way or transformed. And I'm not going to be looking at the past hour, but as I move up, I'm going to be interested maybe the past week. And these are all the things that is key to a unified namespace. And just another dashboard and another dashboard. And I think that's going to basically wrap it up. I want to make sure we save some time for conversations. And if there's anything that we can, if I can answer, please drop it in the chat. Thank you to the EMQ team as well.
Absolutely.
Sure. Great. It seems I have a question for you. It seems like very similarly to us that you're taking a technology and you're layering some enterprise features over that technology to make sure that things that enterprises expect, like scalability and and security, you're providing that's what you're providing with FlowFuse. Is that right?
That's correct. I mean, and the thing is our core plot product, which is Node-RED, can do a lot of the things as is, but it really makes your life easier. And you said the security and compliance, and at the same time, you've got somebody you can call if you need a little bit of help.
Mhm.
That's another big thing is, you got the team, you got the experts at, on hand with our product.
Yeah, that's fundamental.
Right.
Being on an open source company, like, yeah, we get it. Open
Yeah,
source
yeah,
has some great benefits, right? Certainly people like the price tag, low barrier to entry, which makes it fantastic for just trying to dabble with IoT and understand how it works. But yeah, then when it comes to having a production system and stuff breaking down, that community forum as a support option isn't so great.
Well, and one of the things I always like to talk about is like you start from the lowest common denominator because like you think about, hey, I'm going to try out this new SCADA system. I'm going to try out this new system. It's the first thing I'm going to do is turn off security, turn off everything that makes me be able to get up and running as quickly as possible to see if the product does what I need it to do. And that is what open source really kind of helps you do is you get in there, you install it, you say, does it do what I need it to do? And then you say, okay, now I realize there is a bigger behemoth that for this to really roll out, I'm going to need some support. Okay, IT team or some other team, are you going to support this? So this is more flow fuse oriented. Are you going to support this? And they say, oh, we got a lot on our plate. That seems a lot of work, and we don't necessarily want to commit
Yeah.
to rolling that out. And that's where we kind of come in and say, okay, we kind of do the SSO security and compliance, role based access, tie into everything and scale it out to exactly what both the customer, the OT side, and the IT side can then agree on.
Can you go into a little bit more detail about the business model? I used to be a system integrator. I know we've got folks on here who are system integrators. And yeah, what you're talking about is really important for selling your solution to your customer, right? Because they don't want to get the feeling from you that you're saddling them with something that's not going to be easily supported, right? So yeah, how do you go? Do you have your own support team? Is FlowFuse considered its own product that's just hosting Node-RED instances? Maybe you can explain that.
Yeah, no. So we have on-prem solution and in the cloud solution. Let's talk about that as well. So, and that is also open source to a certain level of devices as well. So, but going to your question, it's kind of like our go-to-market strategy. Like, how do you want to see, system integrators interacting with customers, and how does our support team? And how I kind of approach it is, I think, and being a former system integrator, and this is very much more applicable to North America, is at the end of the day, you need to call somebody. If you're a plant and facility, you need to be able to call somebody. I need somebody here tomorrow to help troubleshoot this. And so tomorrow is sometimes too late too. I need my local system integrator that is capable and enabled to get started with this. So the way I view it is we really need to empower the system integrators to use the tools because at the end of the day, it's kind of like ladder logic, which is a PLC programming language down in the PLC. Plants and facilities can write ladder logic as probably the easiest one, and they standardize on it, even though it's not the most powerful. but they still outsource it to system integrators to do it because it's a time constraint. It may not necessarily be a technical, but what you can do is say, hey, I need this done on a massive scale. Let me bring in my system integrator that I can then depend on him to come in and help solve this problem later in time. So I really do think system integrators are key to any automation and controls journey.
Yeah, cool.
Absolutely. And we want to, another similar thing we have in common is, and this totally helps the system integrator, is our flexibility of deployment. Because we cover so many different industries. We want to give you the flexibility to deploy in how it makes sense for your business. Docker's, Kubernetes, to be able to have one-click consistent deployments when you're launching them yourself in the cloud, or if you have the team to build this out, hey, great. If you have the developers and the cycles available, great. But many of these enterprises do not, right? So that's when you want to move more towards the managed services, right? You log in, you help us, or we help you deploy that infrastructure in the cloud. And for many of our new customers, we actually connect with them right on Slack, right? So again, instead of having to go to the forums, we do have some great resources on the forums. Almost any system you want to connect to, we have tutorials out there to do it. But we want to give you that fully managed option, and that's again where we bring in that enterprise value.
Absolutely, and you're hitting it on the head. And even those professional services come in three layers. You have the setup of the system, and the configuration, setup and configuration, the building of and then using and developing what you need to be done within that environment. So, and a lot of people sometimes overlook that first initial deployment, and that can be sometimes the most critical piece.
Yes, and I want to, speaking of tutorials, we do have, again, we have some great tutorials on our website, including a step-by-step on how to connect to Node-RED. So many of our customers have taken advantage of that value that our EMQ broker and the Node-RED service has with FlowFuse. As Gray said, you have a step, you go a step further and add another layer of value, and we're mostly known for our broker. Most people know us as an MQTT broker, but as the more I travel, the more I talk to customers, especially in that IIoT space, our Neuron and Neuron EX, our Neuron EX product comes up a lot mainly because of the protocol integration. And we talked about some of the legacy protocols like SCADA, OPC DA, OPC UA, Modbus. We want to be able to seamlessly connect to that data, and that's what Neuron EX, where Neuron EX really shines. And so, if you're looking for a way, if you're at that step one, right, where you're trying to connect your devices, when we talk about moving up those different levels, that level one, right, is connecting to those devices and being able to pull that data in, so that we're not siloed.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly the first key step is getting that data in, and so the neuron is very, very, very key to that, and doing that transformation to get data into the ecosystem.
Absolutely. And I want to mention too another tool that we have, which is our MQTTX, right? So as we said, Gray said, um, sometimes people start with just our serverless tool, where you just want to get started, right? You just want to make sure that it's working. With MQTTX, you can actually simulate devices so you don't have to connect to your real world devices yet. You can make sure that your scale is there, your reliability, and not with with those enterprise features. Again, that's why we stretch across so many industries. And we that's one of the things that we're reaching out to find out in the poll is we want to know what you're doing with your IoT workflow, with your IIoT workflow. How are you using Node-RED? And we want to make this as interactive as possible. And with our office hours, you drive the conversation. And many times, if the things we're seeing in chat, the things that we're seeing coming in Q&A, those become the topics that we cover. So really appreciate you joining us, Gray, and bringing that value to our conversation. I do want to make sure that we get some time. Ivan joined us from our solutions team, and so I want to make sure that he has some time to cover some of the features that we've added recently into our broker. So let me share my screen here for 1 second and give Ivan the floor. 1 second.
In between, just wanted to give a reminder that the poll is running in the background. You might just see it on your screen. You might have minimized it by now. Would request you to please fill it in. Part 1 had been launched before. I think part 2 is also visible to all. It is really important for us to know what you're thinking and what, as Ernest mentioned, where you want us to go, like which direction you want these office hours to go. We always hear your feedback. We've incorporated the changes that you have suggested us. So this will really help us, to help you later. As Ivan is joining back, there are like 2-3 key item action points that I would like to discuss. I specifically held my introduction till the very last. Most of you know me. Unfortunately, you cannot see my video, but then I've been joining for all these office hours there. Any developer related queries, anything that you are facing an issue, I am the intermediary between EMQ and you guys. Sometimes it becomes slightly tricky to get in touch with a lot of people that you are interacting with. Please feel free to reach out at any time through different channels. We do have different channels available for you as well. One of which I think are the community channels. Excellent conversations which are happening. We are almost like 2,000 people strong in our Discord community and in our Slack community. People have different discussions around what are the different use cases. I'm sure most of you are there. Otherwise, there are links that we have shared before. Please take a minute and join these communities so that you are updated with the latest what is happening with EMQ. Secondly, I would urge you to be a part of the newsletters that we are sending out. There are 2 sets of newsletters that go out. One is from the developer side and one is from the marketing side. Again, the links are there. Wish you to literally just make a wish and subscribe, and you can also unsubscribe them. We have given that opportunity to everyone. So these are the 2-3 channels. I'm going to speak about other channels towards the very last. So I'll hand it over to Ivan. As Ernest mentioned, he's from the product team. We've been seeing different demos of EMQX Cloud, our flagship product, which is where you guys are or maybe evaluating today how to use it. So I think these are the new features that have been added. Again, urging out that these sessions are for you. Please take this time to, take whatever smallest of information that you require from the experts that we have today. So over to you, Ivan, and in between, you can share your screen, Ernest or Ivan.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about latest updates. So latest version of NGAX is 5.5.0, and this list is what has changed compared to previous release 5.4. So we've made available support for persistent sessions with RocksDB. Right now we call it feature preview because it works in a single node mode without high availability, which in more, in English, it means that if say you connect to, so you have a cluster of NGAX nodes, like several nodes, and you have clients connecting to a node, and they have persistent sessions within that node. So if client disconnect, and then the data will be persisted there. But if that node goes down and your client connects to another node, then that data is not replicated. So the clients will not find the sessions on another node. And we are working hard to make this feature production grade so that RocksDB is working in cluster mode, in replicated mode, and performance is on the level that we are satisfied with. Next, we have improved efficiency of data synchronization between core nodes in high latency environments. And by high latency environments, think like cross-regional cluster. Like if we talk about North America, it could be you have one node on the East Coast, another on West Coast, and yet another maybe in Mexico somewhere, I don't know. And so in this case, so made some improvements, and cluster should work better and more reliably when, for example, you have a spike of connections. Also, like a little bit technical, another improvement, which is also pretty technical, improved network efficiency during routes cleanup. I think it's related to previous one. So means that the cluster consumes less network bandwidth and in general works more efficiently when we do internal maintenance. And by routes here, you can think as a topics table, because in MQTT you could have like thousands or millions of topics. We've also introduced a couple of new APIs and made improvements in existing APIs. So now it's even more convenient to use NGAX via like maybe some automation scripts. We've improved JWT, JSON Web Tokens authentication. Added tags field for actions and connectors. It's pretty useful for filtering and grouping if you have a lot of them. Various performance improvements and data integrations. We also added more metrics to improve observability, and I gotta say, like this part, exposing more metrics and like a couple of other things, it's a large part driven by our internal cloud team. So since our cloud team runs Broker on the cloud, or right now they're on version 4 and they're preparing to move to version 5, they're pushing us to make NGAX even more robust and more operator friendly. So, but basically everyone benefits on the end. And pre-last is concurrent creation and updates of data integrations, which means so you can run NGAX-CTL export and NGAX-CTL import, so to back up your data and to restore from backup. And before this release, if you have, say, like a lot of different integrations with like Redis, Postgres, MySQL, and so on, when you import it, the EMQX would just go one by one and try to set up connection to each integration while it imports data. And that is needed because we have to make sure that the integration actually works and have the correct status. And you can imagine if you have each database, each integration have their own latency, and for each integration you have to wait until database responds, but not anymore. So in this release, it will just spawn all connections simultaneously and try to validate them at the same time. So it greatly improves speed. And just in general, as we usually do, bug fixes found by us or customers or you guys from community, and different performance improvement as well. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you. And it's always impressive to me, just how fast we move, how we're pioneering and the movement of IoT and contributing to not just the standard itself, but just pushing the capabilities forward for MQTT and for our MQTT platform. So thank you for sharing with us, Ivan. Thanks to all of you that have joined. Great. Thank you so much. Anything you want to say in closing as we close out here?
No. Well, of course, there goes my camera again. But thank you, Ernest. Thank you, Dash. Thank you, Manan, and the EMQX team or EMQ team for having me. If you're interested in Node-RED or FlowFuse, feel free to give it a shot. We have a free trial for 2 weeks, leveraging the cloud platform. If you're interested in giving it a shot,
node-red.org, node-red.org. Is that right?
Flowfuse.com, and then node-red.org. So for the core software, it's node-red.org or flowfuse.com.
Okay, cool. Dropping those in the chat for anybody who's interested in following up. And please do, I know we have a lot of folks here who are students or just getting to know MQTT and the IoT conceptually. Node-RED is a fantastic way to do that. I feel like, one, it doesn't require you to do hardly any coding or none at all to build really full functioning kinds of applications. So yeah, it should definitely be part of your toolkit. Got a closing poll that's coming out too.
Yeah, there's a part 2 to it.
Cool.
It's like, yeah, before ending, I think before everyone leaves, if you can take a minute to fill up this poll, it will be really helpful for us to streamline these sessions. And on ending notes, yeah, again, thanks everyone for taking time to join this session. And then from the panelist side, I would like to take a special thank you to Gray for joining us as well. So I think this was a good session. There were like key insights from the industrial IoT space that we all got to know. Next time's agenda, I think generally what happens is these office hours, by now we have set up a routine that we always organize them towards the very last week of every month. That would be the schedule going forward. So now you can expect us to join in March towards the end. And
Can you tell us the date? I know you know it.
Yeah, I know the date as well, but then why not? I'll just put it in chat in a bit. There is a form also that will come to you on your mailboxes. If you still not subscribed to our newsletters and EMQ office hours website, I urge you to do it. It's quite informative in a way, just to know what's happening at EMQ.
For the Substack newsletter really gets into like the nitty gritty of EMQX. Like if you're trying to become an expert at designing, configuring, operating MQTT brokers, like that newsletter is where you want to be for that. Yeah.
For sure, and I'm sure there is a lot of mix up of business side of professionals also which are joining us. We do have the marketing newsletter for understanding.
Yeah, we also do like a general company newsletter. If you subscribe on our website, that's what you will get, and that covers stuff beyond. I feel like the kind of the developer side, which is what our Substack newsletter covers. So if you want to follow events, you want to get informed about webinars, product releases, that kind of stuff, that's usually what we feature in the company newsletter.
Yep. So I think there is we'll share the poll results. I think next time with everyone, we'll start off with the poll results so that it's informative for everyone to know what the highlights are. And yeah, thanks a lot for your time. I know we have extended, so sorry for that. We've extended by 7 minutes. And thanks once again to everyone. And have a good day ahead. Thank you. Bye bye.